Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Criminal Cases Today. Today, we're going to delve into a case that shocked everyone and left a deep mark on criminal history. We're talking about the tragic murder of Candace Rogers, a young woman whose cruel fate and search for the truth lead us to a mystery that lasted decades. In a case that unfolded for more than 60 years, shocking revelations and advances in forensic science finally brought answers to a puzzle that seemed to have no solution. Get ready for an intriguing journey as we explore the details of this complex and exciting case, and discover how a combination of perseverance and technology helped to unravel the identity of Candace's killer. Stay with us until the end to understand all the details and, who knows, leave your opinion on what really happened. Let's go. It was a sunny Friday, March 6, 1959, and Candy, a 9-year-old girl with wavy brown hair and curious eyes, was walking home from school with her backpack on her back and a smile on her face. She lived with her mother, Elaine, in a simple but cozy house surrounded by a flower garden. Candy was looking forward to the weekend, when she could finally play with her friends. She couldn't wait to get out and enjoy the sunny Saturday. But before any fun, Candy had a plan for that afternoon. To help the Snowbirds, the Girl Scout troop she was a part of, raise funds for a special activity they were planning. As part of the fundraiser, each girl had to sell campfire chocolates to their neighbors, and Candy had been given the task of selling 7 boxes. The sweet aroma of the chocolates was already filling the air, and Candy was determined to sell them all that day. She ran home, where she found her mother preparing dinner. "Mommy, can I go out and sell the chocolates now?" Candy asked, her eyes shining with anticipation. "Sure, honey," Elaine replied with a smile. "But remember to be back before dark. You know the rule." Candy nodded vigorously. It was a rule she always followed. Elaine liked to stress the importance of Candy getting back before nightfall, ensuring her daughter's safety. If Elaine had known that today would be different from any other day, she might have thought twice about letting her go. Candy ran into the kitchen, grabbed an oatmeal cookie from a jar on the table, and devoured it in seconds. Then she had a quick play with her dog, a loving mutt named Max, who wagged his tail happily. "I'll be right back, Max," she said, petting the dog before grabbing the boxes of chocolates. With a light heart and full of excitement, Candy walked out the front door. The sun was just beginning to dip below the horizon, turning the sky orange and pink, and Candy walked through the neighborhood streets. It was around 4 p.m., and other girls her age were also on their candy-selling mission. They laughed and chatted as they walked from door to door. For Candy, it was just another normal day. She loved talking to her neighbors, many of whom already knew her by name. She knocked on doors, smiling as she showed off her chocolates and explained the No Birds campaign. Her enthusiasm was contagious, and she had already sold a few boxes. Each time a box was empty, Candy felt a small surge of pride rise in her chest. But then something unexpected happened. No one knows exactly what it was, but Candy didn't come home. The hours passed, and around 5:30 a.m., Elaine began to feel a knot in her stomach. Candy never took this long. She stared out the window, expecting to see her daughter turning the corner at any moment. The minutes dragged by, each second feeling like an eternity. The sky was already losing daylight, and Elaine kept hearing Candy's footsteps in her mind, but they never came. At 6 o'clock, Elaine could wait no longer. Her worry turned into a growing fear. She rushed to the phone and called Candy's grandfather, Milton, explaining what was happening. Soon, friends, relatives, and neighbors learned that Candy had not returned home, and a small group gathered to search for her. It was a close-knit community, and everyone was willing to help. They began knocking on doors, asking people if they had seen Candy. Some said they had seen her earlier, walking around with her boxes of chocolates, always smiling. But no one knew where she was now. Around 7 p.m., Candy's grandfather, Milton, and his friends were walking briskly through the neighborhood, trying to find any sign of the girl. Suddenly, a car sped by, nearly hitting the group. They dove to the side, their hearts pounding, but they didn't let the fright stop them. They continued their search, calling for Candy, even as darkness began to cover the city. Shadows from trees stretched across the sidewalk, and streetlights flickered, creating an air of mystery and fear. When word of the disappearance reached the authorities, police and sheriff's deputies quickly joined the search. Officers searched the streets with flashlights, while residents held candles and called Candy's name, hoping to hear her voice respond. The tension in the air was palpable. Then, around 9 p.m., a search party made a grim discovery. In a dark corner of a park, they found a few boxes of campfire chocolates scattered across the ground. There were 6 boxes in all, and everyone believed that they were the same ones that Candy was selling. 6 boxes of chocolates were found scattered on the floor, even though they knew that she had left the house with 7. This made everyone even more worried. What happened to the 7th box? Searches in the neighborhood and nearby areas yielded no results. There was no sign of Candy anywhere, as if she had disappeared into thin air. Elaine, Candy's mother, was desperate. She couldn't sleep that night. She paced the living room, looking out the window, expecting to see Candy come through the door at any moment. Every time she heard a noise outside, her heart would jump in her chest, but soon the hope would turn to anguish again. 1,000 thoughts ran through Elaine's mind. She wondered if Candy was hurt, lost, or in danger. Had someone taken her? Was she somewhere, alone and afraid? The uncertainty was unbearable. Elaine felt a lump in her throat, and tears silently streamed down her face as she prayed for her daughter to return home safely. The entire neighborhood was on alert, and everyone wondered what could have happened to little Candy. The possibilities were many. Had she been in an accident? Could she have been attacked by a wild animal? Or, even more frightening, had someone taken her? These questions echoed in everyone's mind, but no one had any answers. The search continued for days, but nothing was found. The police, the community, everyone came together to try to find Candy. Days turned into weeks, and then into months, with no solid leads. The questions remained unanswered for a long time, until, 60 years later, the truth finally began to emerge. The pain Candy's parents felt was hard to imagine. Losing a child is something no one should ever have to experience. For Elaine and Cal, the devastation was complete. They remembered Candy's joyful laugh, how she would run around the garden, her bright eyes full of curiosity. Now, all that was left were memories, and a void that seemed impossible to fill. Pain, anger, and helplessness mixed together in a whirlwind of emotions. They wanted justice, but most of all, they wanted their daughter back. Cal, Candy's father, could never get over what happened. The tragedy marked his life forever, and he carried that pain with him until the end of his days. Our case today takes us to Spokane, a charming city in Washington state, in the United States. Spokane is known for its rich cultural heritage and stunning natural beauty. With the Spokane River running through the heart of the city, it is a favorite destination for nature lovers. People enjoy strolling through the parks, biking along the river, and enjoying the scenery that changes with the seasons. In addition to its natural beauty, Spokane is famous for being the birthplace of Father's Day, a celebration that originated in the city, and also for its annual Lilac Festival, which paints the city with the vibrant colors of these flowers when they bloom, creating a spectacle of beauty and fragrance that attracts visitors from all over. Candy was born in 1950, the only child of Elaine and Cal Rogers. From the moment she was born, her parents adored her. Candy was a happy child, full of life and energy. She loved playing outside, running around the yard and exploring the world around her. Her parents did everything they could to give her a happy and secure life. However, as is often the case, Elaine and Cal's marriage did not last. For reasons that were never quite clear, they divorced and went their separate ways. Candy was left in the care of Elaine, who was a teacher. Elaine always tried her best to be the best mother she could be to Candy. She made sure that her daughter was happy, safe and surrounded by love. Candy was a popular little girl in the community. Everyone who knew her adored her. She had an infectious smile, a happy laugh and a sweet way of talking to people. She was curious and enjoyed learning new things. At Holmes Elementary School, where Candy attended, she was a dedicated student and had many friends. Like many girls her age, Candy joined the Bluebirds, a youth organization that provided educational and recreational activities. She loved being part of the group and actively participated in all of its activities. The Bluebirds did lots of fun things together, crafts, camping, and of course, selling chocolates to raise funds for their activities. For Candy, being a Bluebird was a great adventure. Candy was a 9-year-old girl, full of life and dreams. She loved playing with her friends, running around the yard, and helping her mother with the little chores around the house. Everyone who knew Candy spoke of her kindness and sweet nature. She was a little girl with a smile that lit up any room and a future that seemed promising. But no one could have imagined that a tragedy was about to happen, one that would shake the entire community and change her family's lives forever. Before we continue, just make sure you're already subscribed to the channel, because here you'll always find out about criminal cases that shocked the world and you don't want to miss out, so go ahead and subscribe. Thank you very much. Now back to the subject. It was a Friday afternoon, March 6, 1959, when Candy decided to go out and sell mints in her neighborhood. She was part of a group called the Bluebirds, a kind of girls' club, and they were raising money for one of their upcoming activities. Candy was excited about the idea of helping out and winning the Best Saleswoman badge. She grabbed her 7 boxes of mints, said goodbye to her mother Elaine, and walked out the front door with a smile on her face. "Don't forget to come back before dark," Elaine reminded her. Candy nodded and ran toward the street, excited to start selling. The hours passed, and Elaine began to get worried. Candy was a responsible girl and always came home on time. When the clock struck 5:30 p.m., Elaine was already looking out the living room window, expecting to see her daughter coming through the gate. But Candy never showed up. The minutes dragged on and seemed like hours. Elaine began to pace the living room, looking out the window every few seconds. By 6 p.m., her heart was racing. She left the house, called some neighbors, and together they began searching the neighborhood. Everyone asked each other, "Have you seen Candy?" Some said they had seen her earlier, carrying her boxes of candy, but no one knew where she was now. Elaine's anxiety turned to panic when night fell and there was no sign of Candy. Friends, relatives, and neighbors joined in the search, forming a small group that walked the streets, calling for Candy and knocking on doors to see if anyone had seen the girl. The next morning, March 7, 1959, Candy's disappearance was already the top story in town. The case shocked everyone, and volunteers from all over showed up to help with the search. Police officers were mobilized and began patrolling the area, riding on horseback and using cars to cover as much ground as possible. The woods around the city were combed, and main roads were searched. A helicopter was called in to help with the aerial search. Inside the helicopter were 4 people, along with the pilot, all determined to find Candy. But something terrible happened. While flying over the Spokane River, the pilot failed to see a power line in time and crashed into it. The helicopter lost control and crashed into the river, causing an even greater tragedy. 3 of the 5 men on board were killed instantly, Pilot Merle Zinth, Sergeant William McDonald, and another man whose name was not released. The entire city was shaken by the accident. The search for Candy, already a sad event, was now marked by the loss of 3 more lives. Still, residents and police officers did not let themselves be discouraged. They knew they had to keep going. They owed it to Candy and to the 3 men who had given their lives during the search. For days they continued searching, but it was as if Candy had vanished into thin air. There were no clues, no signs, nothing to point to where she might be. Elaine, for her part, was devastated. She could barely eat or sleep. She spent her days sitting, staring into space, praying that her daughter would return. The weight of uncertainty was slowly destroying her from the inside. Every day that passed without news of Candy was a day closer to total despair. Then finally, on March 22, 1959, 16 days after Candy disappeared, a clue was found. 2 men, Ward Lawrence and Richard Jing, were hunting groundhogs in a wooded area about 7 miles from Candy's home. As they walked along a narrow trail, they came to a small clearing and spotted something on the ground. It was a pair of blue suede shoes, too small to be worn by an adult. The shoes were dirty, but still in good condition. Lawrence and Jing looked at each other in surprise. Who would leave a child's shoes in that place? They waited for a while, looking around to see if anyone would come to pick up the shoes. But there was no one around. Finally, they decided to take the shoes and return to base, knowing that they could be an important clue in the case of the missing girl. Word soon spread throughout the city, and the shoes were turned over to the police. The police called Candy's grandfather to see if he recognized the shoes. When Candy's grandfather saw the shoes, tears filled his eyes. He confirmed that those shoes were the same ones Candy had been wearing the day she disappeared. With that confirmation, the police decided to focus their search on the area where the shoes had been found. It was already getting dark, so they agreed to wait until the next day to begin their search. On Sunday morning, a large team of police officers and volunteers went to the clearing where the shoes were. They began searching more carefully, turning over every rock and examining every bush. At first, they found nothing, but they knew they could not give up. After some time, one of the officers noticed something unusual among the leaves. While walking through the forest, he came across a small mound of brush and pine needles. The pile seemed out of place and caught his attention. With a growing sense of curiosity and apprehension, he decided to investigate more closely. As he got closer, a chill ran down his spine as he noticed a knee visible beneath the pile of leaves. His heart raced as he began to carefully remove the leaves and twigs. To his horror, he revealed the decomposing body of a child. The shock was immediate when he recognized the missing little girl, whose clothes were torn and dirty. The scene was harrowing. The girl's feet were bound with a torn piece of cloth, and another strip of cloth was wrapped around her neck. He knew he had to act quickly. The officer called the other members of the search team, who arrived within minutes. The scene was devastating and required delicate care to preserve the evidence. With great respect and care, the body was removed from the scene and transported for an autopsy, while news of the discovery began to spread. The girl's parents were immediately informed of the tragedy. When Elaine, the mother, learned that her daughter was dead, her world fell apart. She fainted and had to be sedated to cope with the unbearable pain. Shock and grief washed over everyone around her. More than 1,000 volunteers had dedicated themselves to the search for Candy. They had spent days and nights searching, moving rocks and examining every corner of the forest. The news that the girl had been found dead spread a sense of terror and despair throughout the community. People began to fear not only for their own safety, but also for the safety of their children. The fear was palpable, and confidence in the safety of the small town was shaken. As grief gripped the community, local writer Dorrit Johnson decided to use her words to comfort the wounded hearts. She wrote a poem with the intention of bringing some relief to the saddened souls. In the heart of the forest, where the sunlight dances between the leaves of the trees, lives the light spirit of a girl. Her joyful laughter still seems to float in the air, like an echo of the days of play and discovery. A soft sadness intertwines with her presence, as if the ancient tree trunks embraced her with affection. Her last breath blended with the quiet shadows of the forest she loved. Her soul is now part of the very essence of nature that saw her grow up. Every breath of the wind carries a piece of her laughter and a glimmer of her lost innocence. Birds stop in her wake to listen to her voice, and flowers bow in a gesture of silent respect. Her curious spirit merges with the sound of the streams and the softness of the blades of grass. Even though her life was brief, her essence lives on, an eternal reminder of the beauty and fragility of life. In every whisper of the wind and in every falling leaf, her spirit belongs to the forest that saw her go. Despite the poem's attempt to console her, the reality of the tragedy was grim. An autopsy revealed that Candy had been abused and strangled. Spokane police detectives began a meticulous investigation, determined to find the person responsible. "We're going to throw all our resources at this case and we're not going to rest until it's solved," the police chief told the media. The case was of the utmost importance, and the pressure to find the culprit was immense. Several people were questioned, but the initial investigation yielded no useful information. The prime suspect was an imprisoned serial killer named Rio Bayer Morse. During the autopsy, a purple stain that smelled like grape gum was found on the girl's clothing, and Morse had a reputation for enjoying this type of candy. However, when questioned, he denied any involvement in the crime. Without direct evidence, no charges could be filed against him, but he remained the prime suspect for a long time. After Kant's tragic death, detectives delved into numerous leads and possibilities, but nothing seemed to yield any concrete answers. Kant's family was deeply devastated and anxiously awaited the moment and the killer would finally be found and brought to justice. However, the months dragged on and the case remained a true enigma for investigators. In June 1963, for years after Kant's death, his father, Cal, could not bear the weight of the loss and ended up taking his own life. At the time, Cal was living in a hotel in a small town called Valeda, trying to find some kind of solace in solitude. As time passed, the Kant case began to fade from the memories of many. However, For Kant's family and the detectives of the Spokane Police Department, the case was never forgotten. "This case is like an impossible mountain to climb," said Detective Isaac of the Major Crimes Unit. He was referring to the difficulty of solving a case that seemed impossible to overcome. If you've made it this far, please like the video, as this is very important for YouTube to continue sharing content like this with you. If you've already liked the video, thank you very much, and let's get back to the subject. In 2001, there was a major breakthrough in DNA technology, an innovation that had been unheard of in the 1950s. Kant's clothes, which had been carefully stored by authorities as evidence, were sent to a specialized laboratory in the hope of finding some clue to the killer. Scientists discovered DNA on Kant's underwear and, after isolating and analyzing the material, created a detailed genetic profile. For the detectives, this was a moment of great excitement, as it seemed they were closer than ever to solving the case. Unfortunately, when the DNA profile was entered into the national database, there was no match. In 2002, detectives tried to compare the DNA profile to an old suspect they had previously investigated, but found that he was unrelated to the crime. The case stalled for a long time, and the hope of solving the mystery seemed increasingly distant. In September 2006, Kant's heartbroken and aging mother passed away quietly in her home at the age of 82, never knowing who had taken her beloved daughter's life. Around 2017, a new technique called forensic genetic genealogy began to gain traction. This revolutionary technique combines DNA analysis with traditional genealogical research to solve old crimes and find missing people. In other words, it combines advanced science with family history to piece together clues and bring justice to victims and their loved ones. Seeing the potential of this new approach, detectives decided to use it to try to solve Kant's case. A forensic scientist was assigned to the case and was tasked with examining the DNA sample that had been stored in the crime lab since 2001. She performed a thorough analysis to confirm that the sample still matched the DNA profile that had been created earlier. After confirming the match, she sent the sample to a private forensic lab for further analysis, hoping that genetic genealogy might provide new clues. However, the news that arrived was disheartening. The lab reported that the DNA sample was too degraded. When the detectives received the news that the DNA sample was too damaged, their hopes were completely dashed. The frustration was visible on their faces, but then something unexpected happened. They discovered a lab in Texas called Otreo that specialized in working with degraded DNA, like Candy's case. The lab was known for its innovative methods and ability to handle difficult samples. With hope, the detectives sent a small amount of the DNA sample there. 6 months passed, and the answer finally arrived. The lab had managed to identify 3 brothers as possible suspects: John, Andrew, and Tara. This was promising news, but there was still much work to be done. The investigation revealed that one of the brothers, John, had a daughter named Kate. Hoping to make some headway in the investigation, the detectives decided to contact Kate and inform her about the investigation into her deceased father. Kate, who was familiar with Candy's story, had heard about the 1959 murder. She provided the detectives with a sample of her own DNA, allowing for a more accurate comparison. When the results came back, the discovery was astonishing. Kate's DNA was 2.9 million times more likely to match the suspect's profile than the DNA of any ordinary person. This result made the detectives increasingly convinced that John was Candy's true killer. To confirm this theory, detectives dug deeper into John's investigation. They discovered that he had grown up in a nearby town and had been living just 1 kilometer from Candy's home at the time of the crime. John also had a troubled history. In 1956, at the age of 17, he enlisted in the army, but his military career was cut short in a brutal manner. In 1961, 2 years after Candy's murder, John was arrested for assaulting a woman. Reports indicated that he approached the woman, used force to remove her clothes and attempted to strangle her. Fortunately, the victim survived the attack, and John was sentenced to 6 months in prison. After serving his sentence, he was labeled a criminal and discharged from the army. After his discharge from the army, John led a relatively normal life, working as a door-to-door salesman and in a lumber mill to support himself. However, at the age of 31, he ended up taking his own life, ending a life marked by tragedy and internal conflict. Furthermore, the detectives discovered an even more disturbing connection. John's sister, when she was just 10 years old, was one of the girls who participated in a mentoring program for children. In this program, she acted as Candy's older sister, which added an even more sinister layer to the story. With all this evidence and information, the detectives were ready for one crucial final step. With Kate's permission and a search warrant, they headed to the cemetery where John was buried. The body was carefully exhumed, and a DNA sample was taken from the remains. The sample was sent to a lab for further testing. The results confirmed what the detectives had expected. The DNA taken from John's body exactly matched the suspect's DNA profile. This confirmation brought closure to Candy's case, bringing a sense of justice to the family and ending a long search for the truth. "It was a real stroke of luck that we got the DNA from 1959, said Brian Amon, a former Spokane detective who dedicated years of his career to the case until retiring in 2021. At the time of the crime in 1959, DNA analysis technology did not yet exist, and no one imagined that it would be this technology that would finally solve the mystery. Without this crucial clue, the case would likely have remained unsolved, an unanswered mystery." Amon reflected that while the resolution of the case did not bring the perfect ending that everyone wanted, it did bring some relief to know that Candy's killer finally had a name. "He may have been buried for years, but now at least we know who he was and we can give him some closure," he said. Detectives have updated Candy's surviving relatives on the progress made in the investigation. For them, relief has been mixed with sadness. Her grandparents and parents, who have both passed away, never had the chance to find out who committed the crime. They left without the answers they had been searching for, and without seeing the perpetrator pay for his horrific act. For Kate, the discovery that her father, John, was the killer was a devastating blow. "Finding out that someone in my own family could have done something so terrible is incredibly painful," said Kate, who was just 9 years old when John died. She grew up believing that her father's depression was the cause of his problems, but now she understands that he was, in fact, a person with serious character issues. "He died being seen as an honest man, when in fact he was so much more than that," added Kate. Kate also issued a public apology on her father's behalf, acknowledging the pain and suffering caused to Candy's family. "I deeply regret what my father did. He took Candy's life in a brutal and inhumane way," Kate said, tears welling in her eyes. "I hope that even though he never received punishment for his actions, that finally knowing the truth can bring some peace to all of us." After more than 60 years of sadness and uncertainty, the determination and hard work of several generations of detectives finally brought the case to a close. The relentless pursuit of the truth brought closure that, while painful, brought some measure of justice to Candy's family. And so we conclude our investigation into the Candace Rogers case. The journey to uncover the truth has been long and full of twists and turns, and it's incredible to see how perseverance and science can finally bring answers to cases that seemed lost forever. Now, we want to hear from you. What do you think of the discoveries made in this case? Do you believe Candace's murder was planned or was it a random act? Leave your opinion in the comments below and share your thoughts with us. If you liked the video, don't forget to like and share it so that more people can learn about this fascinating story. And of course, subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with all our criminal cases and intriguing stories. Until the next video, where we will continue to explore the mysteries of the criminal world. Thanks for watching.